Okay, today what we're going to do is talk about momentum. This would be chapter 6 in the textbook. And what we're going to be talking about is something called linear momentum and impulse. So for right now, you probably heard the expression about momentum before, and you heard maybe something was gaining momentum if it was moving faster. But essentially what momentum is, it's when something moves and has a velocity. So let's look up here and see that we have shown some object, some round object, maybe it's a ball. Let's say it's moving, and we're going to say it's moving in this direction. So it's got a velocity, and let's give it some velocity in our example here. Let's say it's moving at 5 meters per second. So every second, this guy over here moves 5 meters to the right. So it's moving with some velocity, 5 meters per second, and it's got some mass. Let's say the mass is 2 kilograms. If it has a mass, and everything that we have in our physical universe that we're talking about in physics here and now, we're talking about the laws of motion, we assume that they have some kind of mass. Has a mass and it's moving with a velocity, we say it has a momentum. And the momentum, we use the letter P for momentum, and we say the momentum P is equal to the mass times the velocity. That's as simple as that. You take the mass, you multiply by the velocity, and that'll give you the linear momentum of the object. So the mass is easy, but I want you to see here that velocity, if you recall, has a direction. Velocity is a vector, and I'm going to put a little arrow up on top of the V just so that you can remember that velocity has a direction associated with it. Velocity is a vector quantity, so then you might suspect, and rightfully so, that momentum is also a vector quantity. So momentum has some magnitude, and it has some direction. The direction of the momentum is simply going to be the direction of the velocity. So let's see if we could find the momentum of this particular object over here. The momentum would be equal to the mass, which is 2 kilograms. That's the mass. Now we're going to multiply the mass times the velocity. Now the velocity here we said was 5 meters per second. And when we do that, we see that what we come up with is the number 10. But now look at these units. We're going to have kilograms here from the mass. We're going to have meters divided by seconds for the velocity. So the unit for momentum is going to be kilogram times meters per second. And that is the units for momentum. There's no other way of expressing momentum. There's not any kind of convenient units like the Newton or the joule. It's just kilograms times meter per second. That is the units of momentum. Sometimes you could think of this as kilograms over 1, and sometimes you see it written as kilogram meter, whole thing divided by time, second. But that's the momentum, and the momentum is 10, and it's, in this case, we're going to give it a direction. We're going to say that's the momentum to the right. All right, so it's moving to the right. It's moving in that direction. That's the direction of our momentum. Suppose I had some object, and let's say it's 5 kilograms, and it's going to move in this direction. And it's going to move at a velocity of 3 meters per second in that direction. So the question is, what's the momentum? So what is the momentum? The momentum P is going to be the mass, which is 5, and that's 5 kilogram, times the velocity, which is 3 meters divided by seconds, meters per second. So the momentum in this case is going to be 15 kg times meter per second. And its direction is going to be in that direction. So if you think of momentum as a vector, always remember it has some direction associated with it. And up here, momentum is also a vector quantity. So we might want to remember that this is a vector quantity. So it has a magnitude and it has a direction. And that's pretty much all there is to figuring out and calculating momentum. It's a rather simple, easy thing to calculate. So now what we're going to do in the next video is talk about impulse and how impulse relates to momentum. It gets a little bit more interesting than simply remembering mass times velocity. But momentum is mass times velocity. Always remember the velocity has a direction, so momentum has a direction also. And we'll talk to you in the next video where we'll talk about impulse.